Whispers from the Abyss. The town of Black Hollow had a story to tell, one buried beneath layers of fog and myth. Tucked deep in the woods, far from the maps and roads, it was a place that made no claims of grandeur. The air was heavy, suffocating in the most peculiar way, as though the weight of centuries pressed down upon it. And then there was the well. Hidden at the edge of the dense forest, forgotten and unmarked, it stood as an ancient relic of a past no one dared speak about. The stone was blackened, slick with moss, and the opening yawned wide like the mouth of a beast long dead, but never truly gone. The locals knew to stay away from it, though no one could explain why. There were no stories, no legends of curses or ghosts, just a silent understanding that the well was wrong, as though it had a presence of its own. Then, one autumn night, when the wind howled louder than ever before, a group of teenagers dared each other to go near it. It was a typical scene, born out of boredom and rebellion. Marcus, a lanky boy with more bravado than sense, was the first to suggest the visit. "We all know it's nothing," he said, his voice steady despite the quiver in his eyes. "It's just a well. People like to make up stories." His friends hesitated. Emily, the quiet one, shuffled her feet nervously, glancing toward the tree line that marked the way to the well. "Maybe it's not a good idea, Marcus. There's something about that place." Marcus laughed, brushing off her concern. "Come on, Em. It's a bunch of rocks and water. I'll prove it to you." So they went. The woods seemed darker than usual that night, even though the moon hung high and full, casting a cold light over the gnarled trees. The crunch of fallen leaves underfoot was the only sound as the group walked, the nervous chatter that had marked their journey from the town dwindling into an eerie silence. The well loomed ahead, more foreboding than any of them had imagined. The stones that encircled the opening were weathered and slick, as though no time had passed since their construction. The smell of damp earth and decay wafted from within, and the air around it seemed impossibly still. "Well, here we are," Marcus said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. He approached the well cautiously, the bravado slipping from his face as he peered over the edge. "See? Nothing." But the moment the words left his mouth, a sound drifted up from the darkness below. It was faint at first, barely audible, but unmistakable. A whisper. Just a single word, but so soft and low that it was impossible to understand. Marcus recoiled, stumbling backward, but the whisper followed, louder this time, echoing up from the depths. "Come." The group froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. Emily's eyes were wide with fear, her breath shallow as she grabbed Marcus's arm. "Let's go, now!" But Marcus, despite the growing terror in his eyes, stepped closer to the well again, as though drawn by some unseen force. It's nothing," he stammered. "It's just the wind." Yet as he leaned over the edge, the whisper became clearer, more insistent. "Come. Closer." Before anyone could stop him, Marcus bent down, grabbing a small stone from the ground. He dropped it into the well, the clink of it hitting the sides reverberating down into the abyss. The whisper turned to laughter. Not the kind of laughter they knew. No, this was something else. It was broken, jagged, like glass, scraping against stone. It rose up from the well, filling the air around them, wrapping itself around their ears, until they were certain it would drive them mad. Then, as quickly as it started, the laughter stopped. For a moment, there was nothing, just the wind in the trees and the distant hoot of an owl. Then, a voice, clearer than before, called up from the well. "I see you!" Marcus screamed. It was a raw, guttural sound, full of a terror none of them had ever heard from him before. He stumbled backward, clutching his head as though trying to block out the sound. But there was no escaping it. The voice had taken root inside their minds, and no matter how far they ran, it followed them, repeating those terrible words over and over again. "I see you." They fled, crashing through the underbrush in blind panic, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The trees seemed to close in around them, the path back to town twisting and turning in ways it never had before. Every shadow held the promise of something watching, waiting. By the time they reached the safety of the main road, Marcus was a wreck. He mumbled incoherently, his eyes wide and glassy, as though he were seeing something none of them could. No one mentioned the well. They didn't have to. It had marked them. Days passed, but Marcus grew worse. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating, muttering about the well, about the thing that lived inside it. His friends tried to comfort him, but they were afraid. They had all heard the voice, felt the cold dread that had followed them home. But Marcus, it seemed, had been claimed. One night, Emily awoke to the sound of her phone buzzing. A text from Marcus. "I have to go back." Panic surged through her, but when she tried to call him, there was no answer. She knew where he was going. The well. She ran through the streets of Black Hollow, her breath hitching in her throat, but by the time she reached the woods, the sky had begun to lighten with the first hints of dawn. The well stood ahead, silent and still, and Marcus was gone. There was no trace of him, not even footprints in the dirt. Just the well, yawning wide and dark, waiting. For weeks, the town searched for him, but no one dared look too closely at the well. The whispers had started again, faint but persistent, calling out to anyone who strayed too close. And though no one could ever prove it, Emily knew the truth. The well had taken Marcus, but it wasn't finished. The whispers continued, growing louder with each passing day. And deep within the darkness, something waited, watching. It had seen them all, and soon it would come for them.